Cleveland isn't just dealing with a quarterback decision right now. It's dealing with a full-blown internal power struggle that's finally burst into the spotlight. What looked like a simple announcement, Shedeur Sanders will start against the Raiders, turned out to be anything but simple. Because the bombshell underneath that headline is this: it wasn't Kevin Stefanski's call at all. Behind the scenes, something far bigger has been unfolding. While fans assume Stefanski was guiding the Browns' quarterback room, the real architect of this decision has been general manager Andrew Berry, the same GM who pushed for Shedeur on draft night, the same GM who refused to let him slide past the 5th round, and the same GM who quietly, relentlessly fought to keep him on the field, even when Stefanski wanted to pull back. What's happening now is the direct result of weeks of tension, conflicting visions, and two leaders who see this team's future in completely different ways. Stefanski, cautious and unconvinced, leaned toward familiarity and structure. Berry, bold and all-in, saw a chance to reshape the franchise around a quarterback he believes is special. And when last week's loss to the Ravens exposed cracks in the Browns' offense, the debate inside the building reached its breaking point. Berry didn't just suggest Shedeur should stay the starter, he insisted. He overruled. He pushed Stefanski to build an entire game plan around the rookie. That's why this moment is bigger than one game, one decision, or one player. It's a turning point for Shedeur, for Stefanski, and for the Browns organization itself. If there's one person in Cleveland who saw Shedeur Sanders' potential long before the cameras and headlines caught up, it was Andrew Berry. The Browns GM didn't stumble into drafting Shedeur. He chased him hard. From the very first evaluations, Berry locked onto Shedeur with the kind of conviction you almost never see in front offices anymore. While other teams viewed him as a developmental pick or a mid-round gamble, Berry saw something entirely different. Accuracy that couldn't be coached, pocket maturity years ahead of schedule, and a competitive edge that separated Shedeur from every quarterback in his class. Behind closed doors, reporters say Berry pushed for Shedeur in the 1st or 2nd round. That alone tells you how deep his belief ran. And when those rounds passed and the opportunity slipped away, Berry's frustration was obvious, but he didn't back down. He didn't pivot to safer, more predictable options. Instead, he waited, watched the board, and refused to leave draft weekend without getting his guy. By the time the 5th round rolled around, Berry wasn't just drafting, he was maneuvering. He got Haslam involved. He pushed the urgency. He made sure there was no hesitation, no doubt, room for doubt. And when the card was finally submitted, there was no hiding Berry's satisfaction. This wasn't a gamble. It was a long-awaited victory. From that moment forward, Berry treated Shedeur differently, not with favoritism, but with intention. He wasn't viewing him as a backup. He wasn't stashing him on the depth chart. He was investing, preparing, planning. Every rep, every meeting, every evaluation was about one thing: positioning Shedeur to eventually take over the Browns' offense. And that's why the decision to start him wasn't some emotional overreaction. It was the culmination of a plan Berry had been quietly orchestrating for months. But drafting him was only the first battle. Getting him on the field, that was a completely different fight. From the very beginning, Kevin Stefanski's energy around Shedeur Sanders told a completely different story than Andrew Berry's unwavering enthusiasm. While Berry viewed Shedeur as the future, Stefanski treated him like an afterthought, a young quarterback who needed to wait his turn, no matter how much talent he showed. And if you look closely at Stefanski's early comments, the hesitation wasn't subtle. It was obvious. When asked about giving Shedeur meaningful reps in practice, Stefanski dismissed the idea almost instantly. He insisted that Dillon Gabriel deserved the majority of the work. He emphasized that Shedeur wasn't ready. He even admitted that he wasn't paying much attention to what Shedeur could bring to the table. For a head coach who claims to prioritize player development, those statements stood out in the worst possible way. It wasn't just what Stefanski said, it was how he said it. The tone was closed off. The body language was distant. It felt less like a coach evaluating a young quarterback and more like someone determined to minimize him. This wasn't a normal "rookie will learn in time" approach. It came across as a belief that Shedeur simply wasn't his guy. Observers picked up on it. Reporters questioned it. Even inside the building, whispers started circulating. Some believed Stefanski preferred the familiarity of Gabriel, a quarterback who fit neatly into his system, even if the ceiling was lower. Others suggested Stefanski feared the backlash if he handed the offense to a rookie too early. And a few insiders speculated that Stefanski simply didn't want his authority undermined by a GM-driven draft pick. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Shedeur's reps were limited. His opportunities were reduced. His progress was slowed, not because of performance, but politics. So when Shedeur did finally get on the field in preseason and showed poise, accuracy, and NFL-level discipline, it wasn't just a surprise to Stefanski. It was a direct challenge to everything he'd been saying. And when that tape reached Andrew Berry's office, the entire dynamic shifted. Because the preseason didn't just reveal Shedeur's strengths, it exposed the cracks in Stefanski's evaluation. If there was a single moment that shattered the narrative Kevin Stefanski tried to build around Shedeur Sanders, it was his first preseason appearance. What was supposed to be a quiet evaluation opportunity, a harmless test run for a rookie, instantly turned into a statement, not just to fans, not just to reporters, but directly to the people inside the Browns organization who still doubted whether Shedeur was ready. From the first snap, the difference was obvious. Shedeur didn't look overwhelmed. He didn't rush throws. He didn't panic under pressure. Instead, he showed the one trait coaches spend years trying to teach: calm control. His drops were smooth, his reads were deliberate, and every time he released the ball, you could feel the timing and precision. One of the throws that immediately caught everyone's attention was that perfectly placed ball to Larvadain in the red zone, the kind of pass only quarterbacks with true NFL accuracy can make. Shedeur put it exactly where it needed to be, threading it between defenders with flawless touch. It should have been the play that shifted the entire narrative. Instead, the moment died in the most frustrating way possible. A fumble, a clean catch, a secured ball, and then gone. That wasn't the only time either. Throughout the game, Shedeur delivered throw after throw that hit receivers directly in the hands, only for backups to drop them, mishandle them, or fumble them away. The stat sheet didn't reflect the reality on the field, but anyone actually watching knew exactly what they were seeing. A young quarterback playing beyond his years, dragged down by mistakes that weren't his. And in the middle of all this, one person noticed more than anyone else: Andrew Berry. Cameras caught him smiling, nodding, and openly praising Shedeur's performance in a way no one else on the staff did. The pride wasn't just professional, it was personal. Meanwhile, Stefanski stayed silent. No excitement, no acknowledgement, no recognition of what the tape made undeniable. But silence can only last so long before the truth forces its way through. And this preseason game did more than put Shedeur on the radar. It threw gasoline on the fire already building behind closed doors. What happened after that preseason game didn't just shift opinions, it triggered a silent war inside the Browns organization. A quarterback debate became a power struggle. And suddenly, the tension between Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski wasn't subtle anymore. It was real, growing, and leaking into every decision the team made. When the Browns dropped that rough loss to the Ravens, Stefanski saw his chance to regain control over the quarterback room. Reports suggest he seriously considered back on Shedeur, scaling down his usage and shifting the offense towards something safer, something more familiar. In Stefanski's mind, this wasn't about talent. It was about structure, comfort, and maintaining authority over an offense he believed only he could build. But Andrew Barry wasn't having it. Not for 1 second. People inside the building say Barry stepped in immediately, putting his foot down harder than he ever had during his tenure. This wasn't just a suggestion. This wasn't a conversation. This was a decisive move from a GM who had finally reached his breaking point. Barry made it clear. Shedeur stays the starter. The game plan is built around him. The offense moves forward with him. When a GM overrides a head coach, that's not normal. That's not casual. That's not routine. That's a fracture. The kind that only happens when trust has already eroded. The craziest part? Even ownership backed Barry. Jimmy Haslam openly confirmed that. Drafting Shedeur was Barry's call. He didn't hide it. He didn't soften it. He put it out there for the world to hear. A public declaration that told fans everything they needed to know about who really holds the power in Cleveland. And once that message went out, Stefanski had no choice but to shift his tone. Suddenly he was praising Shedeur's development. Suddenly he was talking about reps, growth, and preparation. Suddenly, the coach who claimed Shedeur wasn't ready was building an entire offensive identity around him. But a forced change is not the same as a chosen one. And Stefanski's sudden 180 degrees raised even more questions than it answered. Kevin Stefanski's shift in attitude toward Shedeur Sanders didn't happen gradually. It wasn't the result of a long evaluation or a natural evolution in trust. It was immediate, almost overnight. And that's exactly why it raised so many eyebrows throughout the league. A coach who openly downplayed Shedeur's reps, minimized his upside, and insisted Dillon Gabriel was the guy, suddenly began talking like Shedeur was the future of the franchise. So what changed? The truth is simple. Stefanski didn't suddenly believe in Shedeur. He suddenly had no choice. Once Andrew Barry stepped in and made it clear Shedeur would remain the starter, Stefanski's entire public stance had to reflect the new direction. A head coach can't publicly contradict his GM, especially when ownership is backing that GM. Doing so doesn't just create tension, it damages the authority structure of the entire team. And Stefanski, whether he liked the decision or not, had to protect his own image. That's when the narrative flipped. The same coach who insisted Shedeur wasn't ready began praising his constant improvement. The same coach who defended Gabriel's reps began emphasizing Shedeur's valuable first-team experience. The same coach who claimed the rookie needed time began saying Shedeur could accelerate his development quickly. Fans didn't buy the sudden optimism. Reporters didn't buy it. Even players inside the building reportedly viewed the shift as political rather than genuine. But Stefanski had to play along. Because the moment Barry overruled him, Stefanski's control over the quarterback position and possibly the entire offense weakened. Still, even if the tone changed, the tension didn't disappear. You can hear it between the lines of Stefanski's pressers. There's a stiffness, a hesitation, a sense that the compliments he gives Shedeur aren't born from excitement, but from obligation. But regardless of Stefanski's internal feelings, one fact became impossible for him to ignore. Shedeur wasn't just holding his own. He was proving exactly why Barry fought so hard to draft him. And nothing highlighted that more than what coaches, reporters, and teammates were seeing with their own eyes, the accuracy that changed everything. If there's one trait that separates ordinary quarterbacks from franchise cornerstones, it's accuracy. Not just completing passes, but placing the ball exactly where it needs to be, exactly when it needs to be there. And this is where Shedeur Sanders didn't just impress, he exposed the gap between himself and every other quarterback on the Browns roster. His accuracy wasn't good, it wasn't promising, it was elite. The kind of precision that instantly changes how coaches call plays, how receivers run routes, and how defenses are forced to react. Mary Kay Cabot, someone who has no reason to exaggerate anything she reports, said it plainly. Shedeur throws a beautiful ball. A ball with touch, timing, and placement that only a few young quarterbacks ever master this early. When everything else around him was chaotic, dropped passes, fumbles, shaky offensive execution, his accuracy never wavered. Slipped. Every throw hit the window it needed to, whether his receivers capitalized on it or not. In practices, players noticed. Reporters noticed. Even the coaching staff who doubted him noticed. Because you can hide a player's potential, but you can't hide ball placement on film. Over and over, the tape showed the same truth. Shedeur was delivering NFL quality accuracy in situations where most rookies panic or hesitate. And that's what finally forced Stefanski's hand. It's one thing to prefer a system quarterback. It's one thing to buy into experience or structure. But it's another thing entirely to ignore a quarterback who consistently drops passes into perfect spots while everyone else around him struggles to execute. Andrew Berry didn't just see accuracy. He saw the trait that wins games. He saw a quarterback who wasn't rattled by pressure. He saw a young player who made difficult throws look routine. And he saw someone who could elevate the offense instead of merely operating. Once that became undeniable, the debate was over. Stefanski could stall, he could hesitate, but he couldn't ignore accuracy that screamed franchise potential. And yet, for many fans, one question still hung in the air. If Shedeur was this accurate, why did his early performances look so inconsistent on paper? That answer lies not with Shedeur, but with the players around him. When fans looked at the box score from Shedeur Sanders' preseason and early game appearances, the numbers didn't exactly scream future franchise quarterback. The stat line looked average at best, shaky at worst. But anyone who actually watched the film, really watched it, saw something completely different. And that difference is where the misleading narrative around Shedeur was born. Because the truth is simple. Shedeur didn't struggle. His receivers let him down. Over and over, he delivered the ball with pinpoint accuracy, only for the play to fall apart in steps. The most frustrating ways imaginable. Perfectly placed passes bounced off hands. Clean completions turned into fumbles. Routine catches were dropped, like the receivers were wearing oven mitts. These weren't tight window gambles or risky throws. These were layups. Balls NFL receivers are expected to secure 99 out of 100 times. The Larvadain fumble in the red zone was the perfect example. Shedeur threaded a flawless pass in stride, right where it needed to be, setting up what should have been a momentum-shifting play. Instead, the ball slipped away and the opportunity vanished. Fans blamed Shedeur because the scoreboard didn't change. But the film told another story. He executed his job perfectly. The supporting cast didn't, and this wasn't a one-off incident. Throughout the game, receivers who weren't starters, and in some cases, players fighting for roster spots, repeatedly failed to capitalize on Shedeur's accuracy. It made his performance look worse than it really was, creating a distorted perception that he was inconsistent. In reality, his throws were consistently on target. The offense around him wasn't. Andrew Berry saw this instantly. The front office saw it. Even some reporters noted the pattern. That's why Berry's confidence in Shedeur didn't waver. He judged the quarterback on execution, not the mistakes of others. But Stefanski? Instead of viewing the film with that same clarity, he hesitated, pointing to outcomes rather than context. That hesitation helped fuel weeks of unnecessary debate inside the organization. Still, even with all the frustration and missed opportunities, one truth remained impossible to ignore. Shedeur had earned the chance to lead this team. The only question was whether the Browns would finally give it to him. By the time all the clips were analyzed, all the quotes dissected, and all the behind-the-scenes whispers pieced together, the truth became impossible to ignore. The Browns weren't just deciding on a quarterback. They were redefining the power structure of their entire organization. What began as a quiet debate over reps and preseason snaps turned into a franchise-shaping moment where one man's belief in a young quarterback outweighed every doubt, hesitation, and excuse standing in the way. And that man was Andrew Berry. Berry didn't just draft Shedeur Sanders. He protected him, advocated for him, pushed for him, and when the moment came, when the team needed direction, when Stefanski hesitated, when the offense stalled, Berry stepped in and made the call himself. That's not normal in Cleveland. That's not normal anywhere. But it's exactly what separates passive franchises from ones willing to take real chances. Stefanski's reluctance, the mixed messaging, and the sudden change in tone all point to a coach who got backed into a corner by undeniable talent. And while he may not have wanted this shift, he now has no choice but to embrace it. Because once the GM, ownership, and locker room momentum align behind a quarterback, the coach either adapts or gets left behind. Shedeur's journey to this moment wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. Drops, fumbles, mixed reps, inconsistent support. Everything that could have made a rookie fold only highlighted how poised he really is. Accuracy doesn't lie. Film doesn't lie. And every snap he took revealed more about who he could become. A quarterback with the arm, the control, and the mindset to eventually take over this team. Now the spotlight belongs entirely to him. The game plan is built around him. The franchise is investing in him. And the question isn't whether he deserved the opportunity. He did. The real question is whether he can take all the chaos, pressure, and expectation and turn it into the beginning of something Cleveland hasn't seen in years, a real future at quarterback.